Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where it's about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season premiere of Undone. A great season premiere. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. We are immediately picking up where the season 1 finale ended, where Alma's sitting in front of the cave, not sure if her dad's going to come out or not. And I do like that it's still that thing, like, right, how much was in her head, how much was real, because she still did stuff that shouldn't have been able to, like, right when they were getting information, and Sam was like, oh, how did you convince that lady? It's like, oh, you must have saw the picture of her daughter, and it's like, there's still some unexplained stuff like that, but Sam probably just chalked it up to, like, oh, she just has really good instincts, whatever the case may be. So it still left you going, was it real, was it not? And especially because you have Becca talking to Camilla and Sam, they're both like, oh, thankful that Alma's okay, and you know, it's like, right, she's gonna get the treatment, she's gonna be on the medicine, but then she goes into the cave, and you can tell, like, obviously the bright light, but then you notice the switch, because if you notice, the little scar on her head is gone now, so we're like, okay, so it did work. She comes out, but you know, she breaks down a little because she's like, right, her dad never came out, and she's like, oh my god, it failed, it was all in my head. And that lady, old lady, comes to her and is like, oh, are you okay? And she's like, my sister's waiting for me. And for her, it's like, going back means acknowledging everything, that I have to fit the role that my family has, that I've played for so long in my family, that I'm the fuck up, that, you know, my dad's still gone, but she notices the car is going. She calls up Becca, and Becca is on her honeymoon with Reed, so her and Reed never went sideways, because I guess maybe either in this timeline she never had an affair, because to be fair, the reason why that circumstance was created in the first place is because of Alma, and Alma not necessarily being that person she was in that original timeline, that kind of erased that. So I guess she never had that affair with that bartender, and so like her and Reed are on their honeymoon, and he's like, oh yeah, Bora Bora is like boring without you. And he's like, yeah. Reed says hi. It's like, well, that's not what I said. And she repeats, and it's like, hey, did she laugh? And it's like, yeah, she laughed, honey. And it's like, okay, I mean, for one, you're happy because you're like, oh, Becca and him are good, so that's good. And now Alma's like, oh my god, my dad's alive, everything's fine. And then the old lady's like, oh, like, I guess, like, you know, everything's going to be, like, everyone's going to love you and stuff like that. And almost like, wait, what? It's like, oh yeah, that old lady's going to be the linchpin. She knows everything, like, whatever is going on with Alma, she has some idea. Because it's almost like, it's almost a be careful what you wish for, and things are never going to, like, I think that's going to be the overarching theme in this season, that trying to make things perfect has disastrous effect. We're talking about time travel. The biggest no-no about time travel is just like, you know, Barry Allen had to learn this lesson the hard way when he created Flashpoint, and then tried to undo Flashpoint, but the timeline didn't fit back exactly the way it was. So Alma, it seems like she's going to go through that journey this season to kind of learn, like, right, the more you try and fix things, the more the timeline is cracking, until you're probably ultimately destroying the space-time continuum, because you never know the ripple effects. But because it was interesting, because when she went home, she ran into her mom, and her mom was crying. I was like, what's that about? But it's like, oh, you're looking for your daddy's in the office. I'm like, that's probably going to be, like, we don't know what that's about. So I'm like, is her and Jacob's relationship not good or whatever? But then, like, it's like, okay. And I thought what's interesting, I was like, okay, so Alma doesn't remember anything. And at first I was like, okay, so my mind immediately went like, okay, so it's a little bit like Click, in the sense of, like, you know, eventually, like, when he was fast forwarding time, basically his body was out on Adam Sandler's character's body was on autopilot. I was almost thinking, like, okay, so technically she's existed in this timeline, but she's been on autopilot the entire time, and now this Alma's come here, and now it's like, oh, I don't know any things. But her dad's like, oh my god, you're my Alma. Oh my god, yes. I've been inside this version of myself 17 years ago that night on Halloween, and I've just been waiting for you to finally come back here. So I was like, okay, so she didn't meet her dad in the cave like she thought she was, because they moved on to this is a new timeline and everything. So it's like, that's fascinating. Because now we're getting into the 12 monkeys of it all. Because 12 monkeys, what happened is that you would have your memories of the original timeline, but the moment you made changes to the timeline, it would basically hit you. Everyone would have bloody noses because your memories would end up changing to compensate for the new memories and the new timeline created. But it doesn't seem like Alma has that yet. It seems that basically her consciousness of this Alma Alma from Timeline A where her dad died, because I'm going to start distinguishing them like that. Timeline A is the timeline where her dad died, and Timeline B is this one where her dad survived, which is great. And so Timeline A Alma, her consciousness time traveled into Timeline B Alma. Because I think I'd already seen Travelers by the time season 1 came out, but it wasn't necessarily like a... I guess in retrospect, now having rewatched season 1, I guess there are elements of Travelers time travel, but it being like a conscious thing, not necessarily your body. Regardless, you know, she slowly, like, her memories of this Alma's life is coming to her, and it's like, oh my god, I'm a professor, and oh, the science fair, you were there for me, I came in second place, and I went to college, and how different her life is, and she's happy about it, because it's like, wow, I'm not the fuck up, wait, I'm a professor, wait, we work together, this is the coolest thing, and she was just waiting for her memories to kick in, and they did. But the problem is, and once again, the grass is always greener, because life seems good here, but the problem is she kind of finds herself, I think there's an element of that thing of Alma isn't treating like, she said things, like her dad, her dad's death was a catalyst that shook, like, some stuff that's already in her, because, like, I think her family's already potentially predisposed to, like, mental illness. You know, obviously they're suggesting it's schizophrenia, but obviously there is an element of superpowers. But there is the element of maybe this is very much like a Legion thing. Just because you have superpowers doesn't mean that maybe there isn't something wrong mentally. That maybe somewhere deep inside of her DNA, Alma suffers from depression. Like, she was kind of very depressed throughout her life, and it seemed like the catalyst for that was her dad's death. But what if that's always inside of her? Because now it's just like, she was just kind of going through life in Timeline A, and even now with life being good, she's got her dad and everything, but in Timeline B, she's still just kind of coasting through life. She also learns quickly that she doesn't quite have her powers, and I like that. I don't know if that's just going to be the manifestation of what it looks like now going forward, like her falling through the clouds and stuff, or is that supposed to be signifying, like, no, it's a different time travel thing because she's in a new timeline, her consciousness is in this body, because this Timeline B Alma never discovered her abilities because she never needed to. Timeline A Alma did, but her body was ready for that. Her consciousness remembers and can do it, but without being in her physical body, she can't really do it. Even Jacob never had, like, the greatest ability with him. I mean, he was kind of like a consciousness without a body. Now he's a consciousness in a body again. He can't, like, his powers are way more limited than what they were before. Alma's always been the one with the stronger ability and the constitution with this, but Alma's starting to realize, like, something's up with her mom, and it's like her mom's crying, and then it's like, right, mom's on these secret phone calls, and so she's trying to figure out what's going on there. Once again, it's like life isn't what she thought it was. She even found a note that it seemed like maybe Timeline B Alma was writing. And it's like, we didn't get to read it, but we saw part of it. She was almost saying, like, I'm sorry, Dad, but she was saying something, but only Alma got to read it. We as the audience didn't get to. So not unless that was something else. Because Jacob's done everything. He's learned from his mistakes. He's trying to do everything. Like, his initial reason for wanting to do time travel and stuff was to go back and save his mom so she wouldn't get locked up in a mental facility for being schizophrenic. It's like, no one knew what she was really going through or her power. Like, I could help her now understand what she was going through and help her, but that was his original plan. But now it's like, no, I have to give up my research, because if I didn't, your mom would have thought I was schizophrenic. I mean, even the fact is, remember what happened, honey? I left you on the road 17 years ago. I left you behind, and then I went off and died. I mean, and we now know he didn't just go off and die. He killed himself and Fernaz. I'm blanking on if that's her name. I'm probably butchering it, but it's like, yeah, he killed both of them. Because he felt like he had nothing to live for. But Alma's like, oh, that's not you. He's like, it doesn't, no, that's still a part of me. All it takes is the right circumstances, or rather wrong circumstances, to bring that out of me. So he doesn't want to jeopardize this life that he's been given. I've been given a second chance to focus on you guys. And so I'm going to research and do stuff, look up stuff about my mom. the old-fashioned one, because he learned that his mom's name, basically her original name translated to basically Rachel, but it's like, how do you go from Rachel to Geraldine? Because people had to change their name for different reasons, that, or rather were forced to, depending on, immigrating to this country and everything. You had to assimilate, right? So there's some questions about that, but like I said, Alma keeps trying to use her powers, and she's getting better control over it, like when she's falling, but she can't jump like she wanted to, especially because Alma's starting to feel powerless, because there was an accident where this woman was hit. It was a hit and run, and she could try to use her powers to go back in time, but she couldn't, and she felt helpless. It's like, I have this power, I could have helped that woman. Also have no idea, once again, the implications of the time travel elements, of the ripple effects. We have no idea what that could do, what it can manifest as. So, but Alma saw that her mom was getting out of the car after she was like arguing with somebody, and Alma brings this up to her dad, but once again, her dad doesn't want to jeopardize everything they have. It's like, he's like, I saw what this, like, my mom lost herself in this, I lost myself in this, I do not want you to suffer that same fate. So he wants her just to stop, that maybe it's a good thing she doesn't have full control over her powers. This episode, too, got a little existential, because I even think that was kind of, I can't remember the title of the episode off the top of my head. The episode's title is called The Cave, but what I was thinking of was the description. It says, like, Alma is trying to figure out her identity, because it's an interesting, very existential thing where Alma was like, right, like, isn't, it is kind of messed up, because this Alma was a different person, and I'm kind of hijacking her life. What happens to Alma's, Timeline B Alma's consciousness and Timeline A Alma's consciousnesses are fusing together, but it's still the thing of Timeline A Alma is the more dominant one. So it's like, right, I'm kind of hijacking someone else's life who lived this different life than me for the past 17 years, and I just kind of hijack it. And maybe that's going to, I'm sure that's definitely going to lead to some issues later on, but I think, like, you could get really existential about that. Like, am I the real Alma, because I'm an Alma from a different timeline consciousness, but now my consciousness is in the body of a different Alma who was a different person, different experiences, and now our minds are melding together, but it seems like it's all Timeline A Alma with memories and experiences of Timeline B Alma, but Timeline B Alma isn't actively there. So, like, it's like her consciousness is going, but all her memories and experiences are flowing into Timeline A. She's the dominant personality in that regard. So I did, almost like the dominant consciousness, not personality. So, but Alma is trying to figure out what's up with her mom. So she goes to Becca for help, and then they go back to that memory, and it's like, wait, they go back in time, and it's like, wait, that wasn't me who saw it. It was Becca. It was through her lens, and you see that Becca's there too. I'm like, whoa, did she bring her with her? It's like, no, she's never been able to really time travel with anyone except, she's, even with her dad, she can, like, kind of bring him along, but she's never been able to actively time travel with anyone else. And so it's like, wait, and Becca's experiencing it all too. It's like, wait, you're a time traveler too, because she's never had anyone else be able to experience it with her. And it's like, she's like, yeah, I've been able to do that. It's like, wait, so I guess because Alma never unlocked those abilities, so that means Becca's always been able to unlock those abilities, but just like the death of their dad event and their dad's ghost/spirit/consciousness coming to visit Alma and the accident and everything jump-started her abilities. What happened to Becca in the Timeline B to jumpstart her abilities instead of Alma's? That's the interesting thing, because I guess, like, she's never brought it up her dad, which I think he's kind of ignorant to that Becca has these abilities. Obviously, their mom is as well, and Becca didn't know that Alma would know about it. So it's going to be some interesting conversations next episode as she kind of breaks her sister in, because Jacob had to explain things to Alma. Now Alma has to break things down to her, and it's like, right, I've kind of done this time travel thing a little bit longer than you, sis, and it's going to be interesting, because also there's a beautiful element to it, because now she doesn't have to do it alone, but now we're also getting two time travelers, and what that means for the timeline. This definitely seems like, some timey-wimey shenanigans of things are going to go sideways, and space-time continuum is going to collapse upon itself. I don't know. I think Camilla said it was someone named, what was it, Antonio, whoever it was she was talking to, and it's like, but what's that all about? Is that like a family situation? Is that like a sibling she was talking to? Did she have an affair? Is one of her kids not like? But then what would all this be about? Like, I feel like it has to have some direct correlation with Jacob, but Jacob's trying to do everything. He's trying to be there for her. So what could that be about? I'll ultimately have to wait and see where the next episode ends up taking us going forward with all of this. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.